this chapter, we said the future amount of money, if you want to convert it to the equivalent what you have presently, then it will be always less than what you are supposed to. It will be less than the number that will. I mean, the corresponding number will be less than what will be in the future, because there is an issue of inflation and so on. So what materials will buy you today, you have to use 12 years to buy the same amount of goods next year or something like that. So present worth values are often referred to as discounted cash flows sometimes. And similarly, the interest rate may be referred to as discounted interest rate. So every day things keep on piling, and the value of money and so on keeps on um, decreasing. So in order to meet up this decrement or lesser value, we have to add in some value. I mean some amount to it. So alternatives are developed from project proposals to accomplish a stated purpose. We started discussing about alternatives. We said you have whatever you want to do as an engineer or whatever, you have to have an alternative. So sometimes you want to buy something in the shop, then you say, if I didn't get this, I will buy this. For example, you want to buy iPhone, and then you say, if I did not get iPhone in the shop, I will buy Samsung, for example. So this Samsung is an alternative to Samsung, and they will accomplish a similar purpose. So some projects are economically and technologically viable, while others are not. So because of this, we always have some alternatives to whatever we want to achieve. Once alternatives are one of the two types. So alternatives are of two types: mutually exclusive or independent alternatives. And we'll look at this two types of alternatives in details. So I added this slide on top of what they gave me in the department, so that you guys can have a better explanation of what these two alternatives are. So the first alternative is a mutually exclusive alternative. So from probability, you know, mutually exclusive events and independent events and so on. So mutually exclusive alternative, in this case, only one of the viable projects can be selected. So maybe you have two alternatives, but you have to only go for with one of the two alternatives. So each viable project is an alternative. If no alternative is economically justifiable, then you have to do nothing and leave it as a default this thing. So in mutually exclusive alternative scenarios, you have to choose only one alternative. You have two things that you can choose from. Then you just look for the best one and select it. For independent scenarios, you have more than one viable project that may be selected for investment. So there may be independent projects requiring a particular project to be selected before another one, and contingent projects and so on. So in these independent scenarios, you can always select more than one alternatives, and I will show you in the next slides some examples regarding these mutually exclusive scenarios and independent types of alternatives. So the two types of economic proposals we have mutually exclusive alternative, where only one can be selected and at a time. So a mutually alternative selection is the most common type you can encounter in engineering practice. An example is when an engineer must select one of the best diesel-powered engines from several competing models. So you have a car, or you want to design a car, but you need one. You only need one engine for the car. A car cannot run with two engines. So maybe you have to choose from one of the two available diesel-powered engines. So you have one option. That is only one viable option you have to make your choice from it. And mutually alternatives are the same as viable projects. Each one is evaluated and the best alternative is chosen. So you have to evaluate each of the two alternatives you have at hand, and then you choose the best one. And that is the only alternative you have. An example is the engine of a car that I said. You only have to choose one. So in this case, mutually exclusive alternatives, you say they compete with one another in terms of evaluation. So each of the two engines or so, and so they have to compete with each other. So let's say engine one can operate at high load or something like that, at high temperatures or something like that, and this one cannot operate at this one. So you have to then you go with the best option. So that is why they say that this kind of alternative to compete with one another. Then the other type of alternative you have uh, um, these independent projects, you can choose more than one of the two alternatives that you have. In this scenario, they compete against only do nothing. So instead of you do nothing, then you choose any of them, or you choose both of them at the same time. So independent projects are usually designed to accomplish different purposes. So you have two independent projects, and in most cases they are designed to accomplish different purposes. And therefore you have the possibility to select any number of projects you want. So for example, you have an option to buy an iPhone, and also you have an option to buy a Samsung, and so on and so forth. All of these things you can use them at the same time. So you can put a mobile SIM card in your Samsung, and then mobile STC SIM card in this one. This is just an example, but you can find a better example in engineering scenario where you have two independent projects that you can use at the same time. So these alternatives do not compete with one another. Each project is evaluated separately. So this one, they are competing against each other because you have to select only one project. But this, because they do not compete with each other, you evaluate them separately, and therefore they do not compete with each other. This do nothing scenario, this may occur when a mandated function must be installed for safety, legal, or other purposes. So you have to just do it. If you have any function that you have to do, then you don't have any option or any other alternative. You have to just do it and leave it like that. So example is any safety issue or any legal or any other purpose. And a mutually exclusive or independent project to maintain the current approach. No new cost of this. This is not too important. So it is important to classify alternatives also, alternatives cash flows as revenue based or cost based. So in terms of cash flows, it is important to classify alternative cash flows as revenue based or cost based. So sometimes you have cash flows, sometimes can bring revenue, sometimes can bring cost to the industry or something like that. So in this case, you need to classify alternatives of cash flows also as in terms of this revenue generating scenario or cost sinking scenario. So based on this, you have two types of cash flow estimates. One is revenue, and the other one is cost. So revenue, the way we say it here, and then the other one is cost. So for revenue, so each alternative generates cost and revenue cash flow estimates. So each alternative you have, anyone you decide to choose, or you have you have two alternatives to choose from. Each of them generates cost and revenue cash flow estimates. So there are some that generates, each of them they generates revenues, and the revenues might be the same, might be different from one of the two of them, and then they generate cost as well. Maybe the cost of maintenance or the cost you use to buy this kind of alternative. So and possibly savings. So maybe because due to differences in maintenance, some might result in saving money more than more than the other alternative you have. In this case, they are treated like revenues. Okay, each alternative generates cost, revenue, cash flow estimate, and possibly savings, which are usually treated like revenues. Revenue may be different from one alternative to the other alternative, and these alternatives are usually involve new systems, products, services that require capital investment to generate savings and or revenues. So this is what I just said. Whatever alternative you have, it will generate cost and also some revenue. There are costs and revenues attached to it. So the cost, maybe in the cost in buying this kind of alternative, or the cost in maintenance, or maybe revenues, what you generate out of using this kind of tool, and so on and so forth. So purchasing new equipment to increase productivity and sales is a revenue alternative. So in order to, if you need to purchase an equipment to increase the productivity of your industry and sales, then this is a revenue alternative because you're buying this kind of equipment in order that to increase productivity of your industry as well as increase sales. So this you can term it as a revenue alternative. Then regarding the cost, each alternative has only cost cash flow estimates. So it must have some cost cash flow estimates. Revenues are assumed to be equal for all alternatives. So that is just the general assumption. This may be public sector government initiatives or legally mandated for safety improvements. So these are some of the ways we will look at that you can do some calculations to evaluate what kind of alternative you need to choose and why you need to choose this kind of alternative if you have two things to choose from. So what you need to do is convert all cash flows to present worth using minimum attractive rate return. So if you are given two alternatives and you need to make a present worth analysis of these two alternatives to decide which one is best for you, these are the procedures you need to follow in order to do these kind of things. We will look at this in detail because we have some examples, but just the theory, I would like to tell you only the theory here. So in present worth analysis, so P, the value now called present worth, is calculated at this MARR, that is minimum attractive rate return for each alternative. So what you need to do is calculate the present worth of each of the two alternatives using this kind of principle, minimum attractive rate return. This converts all future cash flows into present dollar equivalent. So whatever you have in the future, it will convert it into the present worth equivalent. Okay, and this makes it easy to determine the economic advantage of one alternative over the other. And once you determine which of the two alternatives has better economic advantage, then you can choose the one that has a better economic alternative. But what you need to do is calculate the present worth from the future cash flows. So you need to convert all the future cash flows into the present dollar equivalent. Once you do that, you can determine which one has better economic advantage over the other. And once you have that, then that is what you need to choose. Precede cost by minus sign. So with the cost, you put it as a minus sign when you're doing this kind of calculations. I will show you an example. For example, they are saying alternative X first cost $20,000. So you buy this kind of alternative X at the rate at the amount of you put $20,000 to buy this. So this is a minus to you. So this is what they are saying. So it costs you, therefore it is given this kind of a negative sign. And receipts, everything you receive at the end of the day, you put a plus for it. We will see all these kind of rules when we start treating, looking at examples under this topic. Regarding evaluation, how you can evaluate this for one project, if the present worth is greater than zero, it is justified. Calculate if you have the present worth greater than zero, what you need to do, calculate the present worth using this kind of tool, and then if it is greater than zero, then the alternative is financially viable. So you look at the present worth that is greater than zero. And then for mutually exclusive alternatives, you just select one that has numerically largest present worth analysis, or you choose the one with less negative value. We will see this one again in the next examples that we will look at. And also, if you have independent projects, all what you need to do is select present worth analysis that is greater than zero, and all those ones you can choose them as an alternative because they're independent projects. Then you can select all of them. But this one that it is mutually exclusive alternative, it means you have to only choose one of the two alternatives. So this is an example that we will look at, and it actually explains what we have been talking about in the previous slide. So they gave you an example, and they said for the alternatives shown below, which one should be selected if they are mutually exclusive, and B, if they are independent. So if they are mutually exclusive, we look at what is the condition for selection for evaluation if events are mutually exclusive. They say for mutually exclusive alternatives, all what you need to do is select the one with the largest numerical value of present worth analysis number or whatever. So you look at the one that has the largest present worth, that is the most positive one, or the less negative one. That means it is the largest. Yeah, this is just English. So you have projects like these, A, B, C, D project, and this is the present worth of all these projects. So the evaluation, they said you look at the one that has the largest value, yeah, numerically largest present worth. So that is your best alternative. So you go for alternative A for mutually exclusive events, and that is all what you need to do. Then B for independent event. For independent events, they said for independent projects, select all present worth that is greater than zero. So all the values that are greater than zero, you can select them because it means what they are saying from the first few slides that we looked at is that for independent events, you can select two or more alternatives, one or more alternatives, because they serve different purposes and you can use them at the same time. So all these ones, they are greater than zero. 2000 is greater than zero. That is project D. Project B is greater than zero also. And also project A is greater than zero. So you can select all of them. Okay. So select all present worth greater than zero. That is A, B, and D. So this is how you go about solving this kind of question. I hope this is well understood. So this is another question that involves using that maybe you are given two alternatives and you are asked to calculate among this alternative which one is better. So they said alternative X, that is X, has a first cost of $20,000. So the first cost of alternative A is $20,000. That is, you buy alternative A at $20,000. An operating cost of $9,000 per year. So each year you spend $9,000 to maintain this alternative X. And after you finish using it, the salvage value of alternative A is $5,000 after 5 years. So it's like a car now. You buy the car, or you purchase the car with $20,000, and then maintenance and so on, maintenance and fuel in the car, it will cost you $9,000 every year. And also, when you want to sell the car after 5 years, you can sell it only for $5,000. So this is alternative A. Maybe you say alternative X is Honda or something like that. Then alternative Y, which is maybe Benz or something, will cost $35,000 initially. And then the maintenance cost is $4,000 per year. And when you want to sell it, you can be able to sell it at $7,000 after 5 years. Okay, so at a minimum return of 12% per year, which one should be selected? So you have these two scenarios, and you need to calculate in order to understand which one will be best for you. So if you remember in one of the slides, we said the cost is minus sign. So if you invest, if you take money out of your pocket to buy the car, you put minus sign for that. If you get positive, that is by selling the car as a salvage, it will bring some additional money to your account. So you put positive sign for this kind of transaction. So we will use this same analogy here. So 20,000 is minus because you are paying out of your pocket to buy the car, and then the operating cost yearly, annual, that is the amount you service the car every year is 5,000, is 9,000. That is the amount is 9,000. You are looking for present worth at 12% interest or whatever minimum MAR, and then the number of years is 5 years. Okay, so this is what you have, and then again you have 5,000. That is the amount you will sell the car. We want to know, that is the amount, the future amount you will sell the car, and you want to know the present worth at 12% and 5 years. So you add the sum of all this, and what you will have is $49,606 in a negative side. Okay, you are paying, or you are losing 49,606 at the end of 5 years. While for alternative A, you are paying 35,000 to buy the car, and then you are maintaining it every year at $4,000 every year, and then you want to know the present worth of that $4,000 of every year, 12% MR, and then 5 years. After 5 years, plus 7,000. That is the amount you sell the car after using it for 5 years at this rate. So you want to know the P. So if you add both of them, what you will have at the end is minus $45,000. So what is the best option for us? Is it minus 49,000 or minus 45,000? If you remember our condition, they said if you are supposed to choose only one of the two events, then you select one that has the largest value. So that is the most positive value or the less negative value. So in this case, we choose this one that has the less negative value, because this is higher in negative value than this one. This is higher in positivity. This is closer to Polo's value than this one. So this alternative is the best option for us. So if the present worth of different life alternatives. So if you have two different alternatives that they have different life span, then this is the way you do it. You must present worth analysis requires an equal service comparison of alternatives. So you have to express all of them at the same years, so that you have basis for comparison. So that is the number of years considered must be the same for all alternatives. So if you have two alternatives and you want to compare these two of them, then the number of years must be the same in order to have a better comparison. So there are two ways to use present worth analysis to compare two alternatives with if they have unequal life estimates. That is maybe alternative A, the lifetime of alternative A, the lifespan of alternative A is 5 years, and the other one can last longer. For example, you want to compare Toyota and Hyundai, for example. So the lifespan of a Toyota is higher than that of a Hyundai normally. So in this scenario, you cannot compare the two of them at their respective lifespan. So what you need to do is you compare them for a specific period of time. So there are two ways to use present worth analysis to compare two alternatives with unequal life estimates. So if the life estimates are not equal, these are the two ways you can do that. Number one is to evaluate over a specific study period. So you evaluate the two alternatives, let's say over 2 years or over 5 years. You say, okay, alternative A at the period of 5 years. This is the money I will use to maintain alternative A, and this is the amount of money I can use to maintain alternative B at the period of 5 years. So this is one way to do it. So, and the second way to do it is to use least common multiples of lives for each pair of alternatives. So you take the least common multiple of the lives span of these two alternatives, okay? And then you do this kind of comparison. And in both cases, the present worth analysis is calculated using the SMART and the selection guidelines you follow is similar to what we dealt with in the previous examples and also in this methodology for evaluation. So almost prayer period, yeah. Okay. We will just stop here. Please don't forget that you have a quiz on Wednesday. Okay. So do you have any question? Okay, guys. Inshallah, we'll try and make the quiz easy for you so that you can all get something out of it. You said you sent me an email, yeah? Okay, you want me to give you my email address? Yes, this is my email address. You can send all your complaints to me through this email. I'm waiting for you guys now, because I need to compile the list and send it and forward it to the people so they can act on it as soon as possible. So you have until 5 o'clock or 4:30 to do that, because at 5 o'clock I will send all the complaints to them. So any question? Okay, if there is no any question, then I wish you all the best in your exams, and I will see you on Wednesday, inshallah.